time as we know it did not exist. Time and space emerged from the Big Bang just as much as matter and energy emerged from the Big Bang. So when you look at it that way, it really doesn't make sense to think of an infinite regression of events. It doesn't follow that prior to the Big Bang there was an impossible infinity, because literally nothing happened before the Big Bang. The Big Bang emerged from a singularity. We know very little about it. We know almost nothing about where it could have come from, although there are scientific theories that postulate where the singularity could have come from, that do not require the assumption of the existence of a God to explain it. But before the singularity began to expand in the Big Bang, there literally was no space and time. So that problem of an infinite number of events is completely eliminated. As to this cause of the beginning of the universe, Shock, you argued that this cause must be uncaused, because it is in fact the cause of everything. It must be changeless because it created a changing universe, and timeless because it must therefore be outside of time, which it also created. And it must be immaterial because it created matter. It must be personal because the only abstract concept that can create things is a personal mind, therefore a personal God. To me, four claims are baseless assertions. They sound good, but it seems obvious to me, and I'm sure that Shock will refute this, but you need not be uncaused to cause something. You need not be beyond change in order to create something that undergoes change. A cause need not be outside of time ultimately to have been responsible for time as we experience it. And something that creates matter and that creates material must not be immaterial in and of itself. You can't just simply observe what the fundamental aspects of our universe are and then argue that whatever caused these aspects to exist must therefore be separate and beyond all possible concepts of those aspects. I mean, you can make that argument, and you have, but I don't find it very compelling. And then the last claim in that argument, that the cause must be personal. Dr. Craig and you say that it must be a personal God because of the personal mind, the immaterial personal mind. And you came back to this toward the end of your presentation when you mentioned that when we are happy, our brains aren't happy. You suggest that the mind is separate from the brain, mind-body duality. I find this kind of stunning because it's very well established that our minds are the products of our brains, that even though we do not yet understand everything about human consciousness, about how it works, about what generates it, we have it very well pinned down that it is at the root of physiological phenomenon, that our minds are the products of our brains. Our minds are not immaterial. And since our minds, and arguably the minds of other animals on this planet, are the only minds we have ever observed to exist, it doesn't make much sense to me to say that the mind is immaterial. You mentioned the long shot odds of the universe existing in such a way to allow our existence. And I want to address that, because very often when Christians talk about, when they try to characterize the odds of the universe coming out like this, and the universal constants having values such that things like stars are able to exist, and as you said, the light and the heat from stars, particularly the sun, is what allows plants to exist and other forms of life. You talk about these as though these are random processes, as though the universe just sort of shook out like this, and it could have come out any other way. We don't know that that's true. we don't know that actually these universal constants could have had other values. We can theorize, we can hypothesize and say, well, if the electromagnetic force was a little stronger or a little weaker, then chemical bonds would be of a different strength, and we're not sure if atoms or molecules would be able to form in the way that they form, and we're not sure if life would be able to exist. We're not sure if stellar fusion would be possible. We can theorize about how things would be different if the universal constants were not their actual values, but we can't be sure that it's even possible for those universal constants to have values other than the values that they have. It's entirely possible that the universe is the way it is because it simply has to be this way. Related to this argument is the idea that these universal constants have been arranged to these values in order to fine-tune the universe, not just for things like stars and galaxies, but specifically for us, that the universe is fine-tuned for our own existence. I think that this view looks at it backwards. I think a much more plausible explanation for what I would call the apparent fine-tuning of the universe is not that the universe is made to suit us, but that we have evolved, and not just us as human beings, but planets and stars and every other form of matter, every other object that exists in this universe has arisen to be fine-tuned, quote unquote, for it. In other words, we find objects that exist in this universe that are capable of existing in this universe. I made a video about this a while ago, a year ago or so, and I used the example of a stick insect. A stick insect is so perfectly suited to its natural environment. When it crawls on the trunk of a tree and it holds still, it really looks like a twig. It might be possible, if you didn't have knowledge of evolution or if you didn't accept evolution, to say, well, look there, that stick insect has obviously been made precisely to live in that environment, or that the environment has been fine-tuned for the stick insect. And actually, it's that the stick insect has evolved to fill a particular niche in that environment. The organism has suited itself through evolution to the environment, not the other way around. If the stick insect were dropped into the water in the deep sea next to a hydrothermal vent, it would not fare nearly as well. And just in the same way, if a human being were dropped into the vacuum of space, it would not fare very well in the supposedly fine-tuned universe for us, where only a tiny fraction of it is habitable. What else did you cover here? The moral argument. I want to get to that before my time runs out. You say that morality, that absolute morality, absolute standards of morality clearly exist. And you quoted a video that I made about the moral argument where I said that absolute moral standards do exist. What I was saying there is that it is certainly possible to assert that absolute moral standards exist without also asserting that a God must exist. Personally, and I believe I covered this in the video, and if I didn't, I'm not trying to say I didn't say anything that you quote me as saying, but I personally believe that morality is a man-made phenomenon, and that morality is the product of ourselves as individuals and of our societies as a whole, and that it evolves according to a moral consensus that is constantly changing. And I think this is actually a good thing. I think that the fact that that we define our own morality is what allows morality to evolve and to grow and to allow things like the abolition of slavery. If morality never evolved, if morality was never allowed to move beyond a set point, then moral shortcomings, or things that we now consider moral shortcomings, could never be corrected. The evolution of morality is a necessary thing to the improvement of society and to the improvement of ourselves, so that we can continue to strive to make better and freer and safer and more humane societies. But let's, for the sake of argument, say that there were absolute moral values. It seems to me that you can't have it both ways. You can either have